So you could theoretically make more in gold or stocks or Bitcoin, or I always love the analogy, your engine and your turbocharger. Life
Mm-hmm.
insurance is the turbocharger to your engine. But your economic engine is you. It's your real estate, it's your stocks, it's your income. But life insurance and the present of a permanent death benefit makes your engine hum, tick, and really work very well. And it's not an either or, right? It's not, do you do real estate or do life insurance? Do you do stocks or do you life insurance? It's a both end.
Hey guys, so welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So I'm so excited. I have a Josh Jalinski. He's the author of the Retirement Reality Check book, and he's got his own podcast. No, not podcast, radio show. Okay,
And the
called
podcast, both.
and the podcast. Yeah. So the Financial Quarterback. So I love that. Where he explores modern financial strategies from retirement planning to cutting edge economic trends. And what I love, he's a holistic planner, right? And he's live on the air and answers questions on the air. So, what I love, he's probably the opposite of Dave Ramsey.
It's like the
and
opposite. Yeah.
yeah,
Dave Ramsey, he like scripts his callers.
right. And I've been on some of your calls. I've been on when you would do them live and you would do them on Clubhouse. So
Yeah.
I was listening on Clubhouse while you were simulcasting.
When you do live, I've only had one live in the last 5 years go really wrong. It was when remember Jim? Jim's in my office. He's with us. We went to this retirement village, and it was an investor club. And I went, nobody knew who I was. I was all like giving my shtick. And we did live Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something out of like a TV show or a comedy actor, a Seinfeld. I went into Del Boca Vista and I was fighting with the senior citizens. It was not really, but there was one guy who was giving me a hard time and I gave it back to him. And one of my clients invited me to speak because we speak at, I'm sure you do, different retirement venues, investor groups, and it was the only time I've ever done one where it didn't go as well as I thought it should have. Like usually when you do live events, people are respectful that you're doing Q&A because they're used to canned speeches.
Right.
And like you said with Ramsey, you know what you got to have as a guest? We had this guy in the show a few months ago. So there was a Dave Ramsey acolyte. His name, and I'm going to talk about, I met with somebody today. It makes me more ticked off about Dave Ramsey than ever.
Okay.
Why buy term invest the difference is a strategy doomed to failure when you follow it to a T. But this guy, his name was Jay Dinsburg. So this guy, he did Financial Peace University, which I'm sure you know what it is, but your listeners, it's the Dave Ramsey, 12-step program. And, 9 of the 12 steps are fine. Don't avoid credit card debt, the snowball method. And this guy, Jay Dinsburg, was a Dave Ramsey coach. Okay. And what people don't really realize, too, is that Dave is now, he's just a media empire, so to speak. So this guy was a dutiful Dave Ramsey student. And did you hear about this guy? And he questioned him on the 8% withdrawal rate. And the guy was on the show. Okay. And then Jay said, well, what about George Camel, his understudy? He said you should use the 4% rule. And then Dave said, George was wrong. And then it was funny. So Jay, you should check him out on YouTube. And the poor guy got shot down by Dave Ramsey. And needless to say, now he's not a Dave Ramsey acolyte anymore. Right. But I met with a guy a number of years ago and found out he had cancer. And we went to the same church, and the church did Financial Peace University. Mm-hmm. And he loved his 3 daughters, like more than anything, and his wife. And he so wanted to buy them life insurance, just merely for the protection, not for the living benefits. He was worried. And he couldn't because he bought a 10-year term. number of years prior, because he went to a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, and by year 11, he was uninsurable. So one of the biggest things, like why Dave Ramsey, I'm on almost a crusade against his advice, is because I meet with people every day, every week. They tell me some horror story of a cancer diagnosis and they are uninsurable. So the buy term invest the difference, fallacy. Number one, people don't invest the difference.
Right.
Number two, you got to have like $2 million to not need insurance anymore, even in that paradigm. And the average person with whatever, a couple $100,000 in their 401k or whatever it might be,
at 60. Yeah.
they need permanent life insurance because they didn't save enough money.
Right. I want to talk about that. Like I started out in a company where the mantra was buy term invest the difference. So when I got my insurance license in 1985, I ended up becoming
A.L. Williams.
Yeah, I was in A.L. Williams, because I was playing basketball. I realized the NBA was not looking for 5'11" two guards, right? So that whole coach thing, I was hype. I wanted something with that kind of excitement. And I was a nerd. So I was like Dave on steroids for about 13 years. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I was like, what he's talking about and what I'm doing. And then I heard our mutual friend Kim Butler on one of his early tapes, Choose to Be Rich. And then I found Becoming Your Own Banker somehow was in my inbox. I don't even know where it came from. And it took me a minute to unwind myself, but it was funny. I was at a networking event and I was talking to this woman I met. Her mother was in that company that what it became, A.L. Williams became. And she says, she works in benefits. She says, I saw that and I saw these other advisors doing different stuff. So she dropped what her mother was doing. And my client had come in, her husband recently passed away. So she was at the event and she was like my third client, literally. And they proved to me buy term invest the difference doesn't work, right? Because, all my people did invest the difference. Doesn't matter. And they were like 23. So in year 21, because they had a 20-year term, their kids were in college. They had real estate. They weren't self-insured. Which is not a thing anyway. And that is like, this doesn't work. And I've been in long enough that you see the other side of this. You see people become uninsurable. You see people you get it, they want to renew, but now their blood sugar is, their A1C is 11.5, right? And they don't qualify. And now I know that I didn't know to lock in the human life value with term, right? And so you live and learn, you see the whole thing and you see both sides. I've seen the I've seen the ULs blow up, and the VULs blow up. And people just look at the flavor of the day and it doesn't work. And so I call it Josh, in my system, the myth of self-insurance, because I said, look, and if you had a house and you paid your house off, would you drop your homeowner's insurance? And they go, no. I said, well, if let's say you had your house worth $500,000 and you had $500,000 in the house fund, would you drop your homeowner's insurance? No, you wouldn't, would you? No. I said, well, now what can you do with the 500,000? Whatever you want, right? So it gives you permission to spend your money, having permanent insurance, having, we can talk about permanent insurance, but that concept gives you permission because now you've transferred the risk with insurance to the insurance company, which frees up your capital. And
I love that. That's one of my favorite uses of insurance, the permission slip concept, because it's not only good when you're retired, it's good when you're working. I lived it. So I came into the business, and I was fortunate enough to be recruited out of seminary by Pastor Bill Devlin, who was a Guardian recruiter. And Guardian did LEAP at the time. And LEAP stands for Lifetime Economic Acceleration Process, for those of your listeners who don't know what it is. And kind of near you in Pennsylvania. It was in Bluebell, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, like I'm 25 minutes from Bluebell.
Yeah, it wasn't and I really loved it. I went to Westminster Seminary, which isn't far from where you are either, and was recruited under the permission slip concept, and having no money, building my career from nothing, negative 60,000, because I did, the first year of business was really tough. Nobody wanted to take financial tips from a 22-year-old kid with acne still, and people listened to me after a while, but the first 6 months to a year, I just had to go into debt to just make ends meet.
Right.
And was fortunate enough to basically do the level of holistic planning that I do today for the last, 18 years. I mean, who can say that? I mean, I know you started so many years in one journey.
Look, it took me, I always tell people, look, I do that now, but I've been in since 85. So almost 40 years, but I had really 1 year experience like 14 times. So I don't count half of it. So,
well, I'm sure it helped you with clients and dealing with people.
I learned how to present and sell and train, and and I was already like, I went through this event, and I did she made us do a Colby for our stuff. So I'm a 7 fact find. So I'm like a super nerd. I get into, I need to know how stuff works. So when I get a book, I don't read just a book. I want to read a bibliography of the book. So what I found my superpower was, and I kind of use it in business today, is I'm good at assimilating information really fast, but then I can draw it to you on a yellow pad. And what I found for me is education, teaching, sell. So I don't really have to sell. I just educate people. And my goal is I always tell people, look, products you buy should be a result of your knowledge, not a substitute for it. So I've always approached it, and I want to help our clients separate facts from somebody's sales pitch. So, but I listen, I want to talk to you. You're the expert.
I like listening to you. So the financial, so my kind of genesis, I started with Leap years ago, and the permission slip concept revolutionized not only how I help clients, but even just how I live my own life. So because I have a permanent death benefit in place of human life value, and the idea is like you're always expanding your human life values, hopefully. Right. So you're always getting, greater and greater insurance. It's like Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami is now no longer Joe Robbie Stadium because Joe Robbie was an idiot and didn't buy life insurance to cover his estate. So his heirs had to pay estate taxes. And now Joe Robbie Stadium, what's Joe Robbie Stadium called now? It was Blockbuster. I forget what it's called now. What do they call it now? They call it something else. It was where the Miami Dolphins played.
Hyinga. No, they changed. I think they changed it though. It wasn't the guy that owned Blockbuster bought it.
Yeah, Joe Robbie. He built. Now it's Hard Rock Stadium. Yeah, now it's Hard Rock. So, imagine having your name put on a stadium. You have the foresight to build a stadium. Like he was big in Dolphins, great legacy, and then it'd be like George Steinbrenner Field not being called George Steinbrenner Field anymore. It's somebody else because he did. Right. Now it's interesting. George Steinbrenner died when there was no estate tax. That 1 year that it was gone, so he died. He died at like the perfect time. Joe Robbie didn't, and he lost the name. His heirs had to sell the naming rights. So, to me, that's another benefit of life insurance. But so
tell them before you go there. Let's back up. I don't want to assume they know what the permission slip.
Yeah, they may not know. Yeah.
Tell them what that is.
So, some of these people make it all confusing. Person A, person B, and right. But generally speaking, if you had a lottery ticket that you knew, so think about it, everybody listen right now. You could be worth 0, you could be worth 50,000, 500,000, 2 million. If you knew that your heirs would get a $5 million guaranteed check when you die, how would you live differently today? And when I ask people that, they would say, Well, I don't know. I'd take the trip I've always wanted. I'd go to Alaska. I'd go to Hawaii. I would do all of the things that I wanted to do now with my family. And it's not about money, really. So the beauty of the permission slip concept is because you know your loved ones are taken care of, tomorrow you can enjoy today. And we've said, people in our industry, they complicate it, right? Like person A and person B. And I love that talk.
Mm-hmm.
But it's as simple as like, if you knew when you die, your heirs would get a check for $5 million, how would that change today? And it would give you a permission slip to literally spend your money like a drunken sailor now, or to spend it a little bit more than you would be used to spending. You would be less miserly. And that, to me, it's not about rate of return, right?
Right.
You could make more. I think our industry too, we have a tendency to say, oh, life, life insurance makes all this kind of money. It's not really meant to be. It's meant to be a permission slip, not an investment. So you could theoretically make more in gold or stocks or Bitcoin. Or I always love the analogy, your engine and your turbocharger.
Mm-hmm.
Life insurance is the turbocharger to your engine. But your economic engine is you. It's your real estate. It's your stocks. It's your income. But life insurance and the present of a permanent death benefit makes your engine hum, tick, and really work very well. And it's not an either or, right? It's not, do you do real estate or do life insurance? Do you do stocks or do you life insurance? It's a both end. And
Right. Both ends.
the permission slip, I heard that when I was 22. And I was like, it was back when it was very confusing and there were charts and graphs. And even though I'm a numbers geek like you, sometimes I have to know the numbers perfectly internally.
Right.
So I didn't know, and you're probably like this when you saw the old Leap guys.
Right.
I didn't really understand how they were going from point A to point B to point C to point D. So I got confused by it. But I was like, whatever that is, I want the permission slip. Because I was newly married. I love my wife. I love the concept of legacy.
Right.
Even though I had no money. I just like the idea of passing on to the next generation and making life better for those, less fortunate and those of your heirs, so that not like, I don't want my kids to worry. I want them to have a little pain,
Right.
in the financial game. But yeah, permission slip was huge for me.
Listen, this is recorded and I will start using that next week. So, and, but because I say it, but that was very smooth. I mean, that was really simple. And, because what I'll say, like because most people, what they'll do is if it's a couple, they're trying to not spend because they don't want to run out of money. That's a baby boomers' number one fear. And I'll say, listen, if you had permanent insurance, because if you have term insurance, it's going to run out. So you need, when I say permanent, I mean whole life. And if you have insurance as your foundation, then you got a tax-free fill up of the money bucket. And so now that gives you permission to spend and know that your loved ones will still be taken care of. And I want people to leave a legacy of wealth and the wisdom to go along with that wealth, because I've seen people blow the money too.
Yeah, that's bigger. I don't know if you've seen this, but for some reason, the last 5 years, I don't know if it was COVID kind of instigating new deaths or whatever it might be, but we are seeing people that I've been working with for 20 years, 18 years, they've passed, and then their kids are getting the money, and the kids are just pissing it away.
Oh.
So I used to be like anti-trust. Like I didn't like the concept of trust because you got to get attorneys involved. I am now more pro-trust than I've ever been, because all of those kids that my first generation clients who are now going to meet their maker, they're leaving the money to kids, and the kids are pissing away in a year or two. Like I'm just shocked.
Yeah, we've added this year. Started adding. I did joint venture. I'm adding legacy planning to it, and they've also read like Gary Gunner's book, "What Would the Rockefellers Do?" Say, come to me asking for it. So I said, okay, let's make sure this is done right and funded. But tell them why you like trust. I want to hear from somebody else.
I like trust because it protects your money from creditors, predators, in-laws, and outlaws. And what people often think, if you're doing our planning the right way, right? You have a
Right.
certain amount, and let's say you have X number of permanent legacy, $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you really want to have a cascading amount. So then your next generation has 10 million, and the
Right.
next generation has 40 million, and then next, and you can keep building. I know because I'm structuring things where I'm proof. I've lived this since I was like 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to have trust so my kids don't screw it up. I love my
Right.
kids, and hopefully all seven will be responsible. I mean, they're 3 through 16, so
Wow.
um but I don't know who they'll marry, right?
Yes.
You could
That's why I say I need to get a trust to protect my daughter from a possible future first ex-husband. Right?
yeah. No, exactly. And not that I agree with divorce. It's a tragedy. Not that you want to set it up, but
I'm
it
not hoping for that.
yeah,
I've been married
it's
26 years and
no,
know,
no, no. I
yeah.
agree though, but 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So you
Yes.
need to realize that your financial plan should incorporate the fact that a divorce may happen. Also, we're seeing clients pass, their spouse, so first generation remarries, and they marry someone who might spend your kid's inheritance. So it also
Yeah.
protects your spouse from who they might remarry after you die.
Right.
And I remember the first time my wife and I saw an estate planning attorney who's since passed away. He's a young guy. He passed away at like 55, 58. And he goes to my wife, "What if Josh marries some bimbo after you die?" And I'm like, well, I didn't really want to like bring this up with my wife, or I thought it was kind of awkward. My wife didn't like that he was kind of in bad taste,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd always thought it was a difficult conversation. My wife would go, "Oh yeah, I get that," And so she was, although she didn't like how he said it,
Mm-hmm.
she got the realization that what we built should go to our children,
Right.
not to somebody else down the line. So it protects your kids from who they might marry. It protects your spouse from who they might marry. It protects your grandkids. You may not know who they marry. So that's the in-laws, right? The outlaws are the in-laws who become bad in-laws.
Okay. I like that.
The creditors are if, let's say your grandkid, gets in a car accident, kills a young doctor, and they are underinsured. They have the the NJ Cure insurance, the $30,000 policy, and then they do an asset search and they find out that your grandchild is a part of this massive estate that you left because you didn't do the proper insurance planning, estate planning, holistic financial planning. They will go after the estate. And the other thing, so in-laws, outlaws, creditors, predators, just the government, because life insurance passes tax-free. So if you have trust-owned life insurance, it can be done the right way. There's so many different enemies to wealth. So the trust, I used to be against it because my deal was I didn't want attorneys to be rich off my account. I didn't like the idea of, I liked that life insurance passed without an attorney involved. I love that.
Right.
And I still do. And life insurance annuities, IRAs, bypass, you don't need an attorney for that. So you don't have to pay attorney fees. But the more and more as I'm seeing heirs below inheritances, I mean good heirs. Like, so I used to hear about Johnny and Jane, and Johnny was responsible. He went to Harvard. Jane was responsible. She went to UPenn, and there were two great kids. But you know what happens? I don't care who you have. There's always a spender and a saver within a family. And the spender could be the kid who went to Harvard or the kid who went to UPenn, and they view your inheritance as like a free check.
Right.
So
exactly.
it protects them from themselves. So I love trust. And here's the thing. We've been incorporating this more heavily in our practice the last year or two. This is a business tip for you. I know you have a ton of financial advisors who respect you and listen to your show and follow you. I've followed you since we met at an industry event. And when I talk to our side, sometimes we have a tendency to like not want to talk to attorneys or not want to talk to accountants because they complicate things. But you know what? When you get a good one who at least respects what you're doing, it does help your client realize, hey, Curtis really cares about me. Josh really cares about me. Because we don't get paid for these meetings. Like,
Right.
I'm meeting with the attorneys, and I've actually had some in my practice where we now charge for this kind of planning because it just got to be like too cost intensive and capital intensive, because we found you go to 5 different attorneys, you get 5 different opinions. So they need us to distill, like, who's the attorney I should go to? Who's the accountant I should go to? And it's been an added source of revenue to us. But not only that, it's been something that clients really need, because I have one dear client, they had dementia, and they got a quote of $30,000
Ouch.
from an attorney to do legal work, which I know should cost like $4,000 to $10,000. But it was too late because the woman's a mess. Her husband, her soulmate, is now heavily, he's under medication, he has dementia, so she just went to whoever who could get her husband on Medicaid. And it's a shame they're charging $30,000 for that, where if you did the right work up front, maybe you're paying $4,000 for that, maybe 5, but not $30,000.
Right. It's funny because your book is I talk about football and being a financial quarterback. And I've said I'm the quarterback. So now I teach people, look, call me first, like before you do something crazy. And then let's talk through it, and then let's find you a good person. So let me help you vet that out, because I know a little bit, because I'm holistic, and I know a little bit about a lot, but I know, and then I know how to stay in my lane, but I can vet out, and then we can, because hopefully you want to, business and investing is really a team sport, right? And so you have to be aligned. So sometimes, there's people, I have people that with the whole life, they're real estate investors, and then she cashed out, she had $500,000. So she's up in New York. All of these people are like, all of the Wall Street people are like, oh, I don't do anything if I can't get 21%, whole life is horrible. Because I'm saying, look, you should convert some of this term and build your capital base up. And she's now deer in headlight, because all of the people are what I call paper advisors only. And so their whole world is through the lens of the S&P and the managed money and this and that, which is fine, but that's just but you're chasing returns, which, and there's more opportunity to minimize your losses than there is trying to pick winning investments, because of the wealth eroders, we call them wealth transfers and I'm trying to get her to understand that. And I haven't got it through to her this summer. I'm fearful that she went ahead and gave them the money, and not that, because I don't think anything should be in one thing. But I think that when you're getting advice from people that, they only see one way. That's why I like that you're, holistic, because you step back and it's like a quarterback, you see the entire playing field. And mentally, that's how you see the field. And so first, I want to talk about that, but go back to, I want to talk about forecasting. So you're out there, you're on the radio, see everybody, see people, talk to people every day live. How are you helping people navigate mentally and actually the volatility and the interest rates in today's market? Do you have any I hate to say advice or ideas on that concept? on what you're sharing with people, what you've seen.
Yeah. I think you mean like what's my outlook on the economy in the next 3 to
Yes.
6 months?
Yes.
Cloudy with the side of meatballs. No. No, nobody has. I mean, number one, I come from the principle. I mean, I know we have a lot of people who we read the same thing. I read something by that guy Les McGuire. You ever read that? The Principle of
Yes. Yeah. The
Economic
economic
Certainty.
value of certainty. Yes.
I don't remember anything it says totally, but I remember I read it. But the title always stuck out to me, that there is a principle in forecasting that the future is 100% certain. So that being said, I try to forecast knowing that the future is inherently unknowable.
Right.
So why does that even make sense? Like, you'll have these people say, "Oh, I can't time the market, so I'm just going to put everything in the S&P 500." And when you actually look, and you're in Pennsylvania, right down the road from Vanguard,
Right,
what's that,
right.
30, 40 minutes. You look at anybody who plows all their money in the S&P, they are forecasting. They are forecasting that they believe that the U.S. will remain strong for the next 50 to 100 years. But they often, I've never met anybody who's had all their money in the S&P, and that's all they do. And even when I have met somebody who had like $8 million in the S&P index fund, was a listener. So I interview so many people on a daily basis. They come in, they pick my brain, might even become clients. I said, "How do you do that?" And he goes, "Well, I have $1 million in cash, Josh," which was his permission slip in a sense.
Right.
Now, we know permanent life insurance is a better permission slip. And if that guy had $1 million in permanent life, he would probably have $10 million in death benefit.
Yeah, I was just thinking that $10 million
like
in
that.
debt. Right.
And he had about $8 million in the S&P 500. And I was trying to explain to him that we offered a better permission slip and a better cash buffer. But what was that guy doing? Well, he was hedging the future principle of uncertainty by having a bucket of cash. Now, you can hedge economic forecasting by having trailing stops, which is if you own a stock, you like the stock, let's say Costco. Not recommending we buy or sell Costco. But you can say with a large degree of like outlook, okay, if Costco falls 20% off of its highest high, what we call a trailing stop, I'm going to sell half. So you're always doing. So I think in today's world of you can't time the market, everybody says that, but they all want to time the market, so they have economic forecasting. So to me, I found there are certain things that work. Like, to be honest, I look at the election, and no matter what side of the aisle you are, Kamala or Trump, I think the market's a little frothy. So I think it's good to have, if you have money in the market, forget, even the insurance discussion. What's wrong with having 30% in cash, treasuries, bonds, cash value life insurance as a hedge? Because here's what's going to happen. If Kamala wins, market's going to probably go down. If Trump wins, the market's going to go down because the media is going to say, "Oh, the recession's here now."
Right.
So if Kamala wins, the market's going to go down probably because people will say, "Oh, she's bad for the debt." They'll say, "Oh, the people like Trump will sell." If Trump wins, people like Kamala will sell.
Right,
and then the
right.
media will be against him a little bit. So what do? You don't sell all of your stocks because I'm saying also that the market may have a rough patch. You just plan in such a way. Bob Castellone, who was one of my early mentors, had the protection, savings, and growth paradigm.
Yeah.
You have some money for protection, some money for savings, some money for growth. That a third concept. Or the Talmud states you should have a third of your money in ownership instruments, like you should own businesses,
Okay.
a third in real estate, and then a third in debt where you're a lender. So a third there. So
I've never heard that. That's fantastic.
And that's very similar to kind of the protect, save, grow concept too, which was interesting. So there's this concept of you're an owner, you're a lender, you're an owner of businesses, you're an owner of hard assets, land. Like people say, oh, should I have gold? Should I have real estate? Yeah, if it falls within your third of hard assets, I'm okay with that. But you're never out of balance. So on forecasting, I believe we're due for a correction probably next year. Things just seem a little too frothy. But
Right.
I want your listeners to be empowered whether or not my forecast comes true or not, because I'm fallible. And everyone's in there. And this 21% person. So like as a general rule, they have 500 grand. Okay, you want to put $133,000 in this risky move of 21%, that's fine. I would argue that I would rather that in publicly traded companies and funds, low-cost funds, or real estate, like things that I know exist,
Right.
rather than, I'd rather have in NVIDIA. I'm not telling people to buy NVIDIA. It's a little frothy, than in some strange investment that I've never heard of that isn't regulated in the same manner. There are SEC reports. I've seen just so many people. I've been here. I'm sure there's somebody tell me about. There's something Larry Elder is pushing on TV now. I get calls. Have you heard about this thing? I'm not gonna.
No, I
And
haven't.
they're like, "Oh, Josh." I get an email. Should I do this thing? I'm hearing Larry Elder, very respectable guy. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Yeah, no, he is.
Larry Elder is recommending me make 12% on my money with this new approach. Well, number one, Larry Elder is a paid spokesman.
Right.
We should get together and pay Larry Elder to
Right.
be a spokesman for us.
Right.
So, so number one, he has an incentive, right? And although he may be a nice guy and you may like him, he's being paid by somebody that may turn out to be false down the line.
Right.
I was reading a New York Times article. There was a guy, the Money Answers man or something. And this guy was highly regarded. And he ended up being barred from the SEC for life, because they found he was getting a kickback from this thing called the Woodbridge Company. And the guy ended up, I met the guy too. He was a nice guy, but I never put my money with him. So maybe this is something like that. Maybe this 21%, and we're kind of tying it back to the 21% thing. How do you know if that forecast is good? How do you know they're not just giving you last year's racehorse? But if you want to take a chance on that, I get people all the time, Josh, should I do gold? Should I do Bitcoin? Should I do this? Well, if you have position sizing, right? You don't have too much in any one thing. Like, there are rules of thumb that they're rules of thumb for a reason. They kind of work. They help people, whether it's a 20% trailing stop or a position sizing, never having too much in one thing.
Right.
But to kind of go back to that person with 500 grand trying to make 21%, well, if, you think something's going to make 21% every year, I have a bridge to sell you,
Exactly. I tell people, look, because it's, and I've seen this analogy in your book so I think we both use it, the club versus the swing. So when they ask you, what should I invest in? Those are what I call club questions. Right. And so I use the analogy, you're going to go play in the Masters. I got two things to give you because you only have one. I could give you the clubs of any of the best players on the tour, or I could touch you on the shoulder. I can give you their swing, their muscle memory reflex, their knowledge of the game. Which one would you rather have? And they all say the swing. I says, well, financial institutions, we need them, but they're club manufacturers. And too many of our colleagues are club salespeople, right? And they or you're being promoted. And so, if your goal is, let's say, financial freedom, passive income greater than expenses, then will this do that for you? Is what I look at. And then so the swing, like, because I said, look, I can sell all the clubs on the financial club rack, but we don't know what you need. until we figure out, all right, where you are, where you want to go. And these clubs or these products will get you there. And I always tell people, last time I checked, there was no working crystal ball. Right. So, I don't have one anyway. So, and because one of the things that I read in speaking of Leap, Bob Castellone was saying, listen, you gotta have a plan that works no matter what. Markets go up, markets go down, markets go sideways. Are you positioned so that whatever happens, you don't get, your ship doesn't sink? And I try to take that approach, and looking at that of, playing defense, saving 15-20% or more of your gross income. Protection, maximum protection is my second principle. I teach like 5 principles of personal finance. The third one is full replacement of assets at death, guaranteed. So that's my hedge against the self-employment mix. So you use permanent insurance. I want 6 to 12 months of your gross income liquid. And then I tend to focus on velocity of money, cash flow over capital gains. But you need both, but you can't eat equity, right? So people that tend to find me, Josh, they want cash flow. Like they feel like, I get a lot of real estate investors, small business owners, so they feel like they can make their business make more money than S&P, so they'd rather invest in what they know and understand. And which is, but there's you just gotta, I always tell people, you have to be able to separate facts from somebody's sales pitch. You can't get your financial advice from TikTok, from your whole, I heard 30 seconds on a thing. I heard a commercial and I trust this guy because now you're falling prey to Madison Avenue, but you don't know how it works, what's in it. You're again chasing returns. And the only way to get better return is to take more risk. And I view risk as probability of loss. I don't view it as opportunity for gain. So I tell people, Josh, I'm the defensive coordinator of your life, right? I don't do offense. I'm going to teach you to save. I want you to be able to understand the difference between an asset and a liability. I want to help you manage cash flow. We want to make sure you're properly protected and you're liquid. So when you see something you like that you understand, you had the capital to do your thing. And that's kind of how I approach it. And so, and I've learned, like, just reading your book, I've helped me, because I don't really do equities anymore, right? So I might like affirm to you if I get somebody like that. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
let me talk to my man here, Josh.
No, that'd be great. Yeah, Retirement Reality Check is the book. I wrote
Mhm.
that years ago, and you were so supportive of me. You bought the book, and folks, if you're a fan of Curtis's, we'll give you a free copy if you call my office at 888
Look, and it's
988 Josh.
highlighted and annotated. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not playing.
The
So,
you know what's crazy about that book? I mean, talk about economic forecasting. A large percentage of my forecasts in that book became true. I think
wow.
I told people the pie's a lie, the 60-40 portfolio was dead. Then what happened? 2022 to 2023, bond index funds went down like 20%.
Mm.
Ravaged portfolios. That 2022 to 2023 bear market was really scary for people who had a balanced portfolio. And if people had just done what I know you advocate with that 40% for defense, instead of what Wall Street commends, or even the low cost index fund provider, the corporate bond fund indexes went down like 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that in Retirement Reality Check. So thank you for buying that book. And
Oh, fantastic book. Yeah.
I want to write another book soon, but
Let me know. I'll be the first one to buy it. The because I do this, but I'm a great student, and so it's exciting for me to meet people. Like, I didn't learn holistic planning till about like 10 years ago, right? So I still got my license at 20. So I'd be a beast if I had met somebody at Leap rather than L. Williams.
yeah.
So especially being the nerdy person that I am, I'd have gone
But
in.
what's so great is you were humble. I mean, I met with some people, and they're great people in the industry, and then who just I can't change my whole business after 20 years. Like, what you're doing, okay, I get it. I trust you, Josh. I like what you're promoting, but I just can't. It's like when Jesus said to the guy, "Follow me." And what must I do? I must, sell everything I have. The guy didn't want to sell everything he had, but that's so commendable that you were like that you were humble enough to change, because it really benefited your clientele.
Yeah, it's not about me. My biggest fear is I don't try to give advice, but is giving bad information. When I look at people's numbers, I agonize over, okay, what's the, and I always call a lifeline. Like if I had your number, I'd call you. I say, look, Josh, let me let you see this number. What do you see that I'm missing? Like, I mean, I will call in help because it's more, I paid death claims. I've seen, this is a big deal. I paid my first death claim at 23. So all of a sudden it wasn't like this little part-time thing I was doing. It was real. And I used to carry that check with me, that, because this is when they still gave you the check.
Wow.
And I got really serious really early because it was a real thing.
Yeah.
And so that's, you get me hyped now. I'm having flashback.
Those of you listening on Twitter, follow him. Where's your website, Curtis?
Practicalwealth.net.
Practicalwealth.net. And folks, follow my podcast, The Financial Quarterback. Get my book, Retirement Reality Check. And then we can, if you want to finish the interview next week or get a half hour here, there.
Yeah, we'll do that. Because, I got like 5 more questions to ask you.
Yeah.
So
well, this is so fun. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to rush. My wife
have fun.
is a coach, and then I'm a coach, and it's crazy. So, we'll pick it up soon. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.